Well, hello there, you delicious guys and girls. My name's Mikey, and welcome back for another tutorial. Today we're going to be learning how to colour in really vibrant, amazing, powerful anime eyes in Photoshop. But don't panic, right now you're seeing a time-lapse sped up version just to show that just now basically I've been drawing some anime eyes that we're going to use for our examples. Now, if you don't know how to draw your own anime eyes, or you just really want to learn to know what I'm doing right now on screen, don't worry. Right now in the top right hand corner is a link to the last tutorial, which was all about drawing eyes in pencil on your paper. So have a look at that if you haven't. It's got some really useful information there for you. Now, you'll notice on the ones that I'm drawing, if you've seen that last episode, I'm not drawing in any circles of reflective light over the lenses of the eyes. And that's because when it comes to colouring in my anime in Photoshop, I like to do that there on a separate layer. It gives it a lot more pop. But if you're just working just on a bit of paper for your finalised piece, don't forget to get all those reflections in. It's all part of the fun. Now, I've got a few examples. A very graphic Widowmaker-esque eye on the left, a slightly larger tsundere style eye on the right, a big wide kind of open one which we're going to use to throw some shapes into, and then on the right I'm actually going to leave out this pupil because we're going to use some shapes in Photoshop to build up a really kind of deep contrasting look to it basically once we've got it all scanned in. So let's get this on a computer and then join me live. Okay friends, so here we are inside my computer. Wow, the magic of technology. This is the page that I've just scanned in. A quick warning is I'm going to work fairly quickly for a lot of what I do, but that's only because I've covered all of these bits in other tutorials. For example, if you want to know how to get your artwork onto the computer, there's another link, aren't you lucky, on your screen right now. So have a quick look there. But I'm going to take this scan page, I've Control-C'd this selection box, and I'm going to go to File, New. From clipboard, I'm actually going to change that to international paper, A4 sheet at 300 pixels per inch. Okay, that's how Mikey likes to work. Let's go to image rotation, and rotate it by 90 degrees. Zoom in just a touch, and Control V ourselves that layer back on. Excellente. Now we're just going to play around and do a tiny bit of housekeeping. So I'm going to edit, transform, scale this image, and I'm going to just scale it up to fill up a bit more space. Select this lock icon so the width and height scale remains the same. I don't want to distort them too much. Get it to about var. Lovely. And then I'm also going to select this eye on the bottom right, the one without an iris or pupil. Oops, get that about there. And I'm just going to move it with the selection tool just to even out the space just a little bit, because I've got OCDs like that. We need to make sure everything's correct and perfect. Now, this kind of looks like it might be fine to work on, but we're going to make things a bit sharper and better. And if you want to know how to get your line work onto its own layer, which is what I'm about to do, again, another link on the screen right now that tells you all about that in detail, because we're going to just speed through this technique. Although pay attention if you want, it's a bloody brilliant technique. We're going to make sure we're on the layer that we've scanned in, and we're going to just really dive into the levels from the adjustments option, and we're going to bring the white bit down just off of the main black of this graph here, this chart, and this black tab over here. We're going to drag this bad boy right up to the main lump in the black zone here, and you'll notice to the artwork it goes from this grey penciled filled in area right up to this really dark sheet. Very nice, very powerful. Okay, now that we've done that, we're going to click onto our channels icon. Where we've got the RGB, I'm going to hover over the image, hold down Control and give it a left click, and then I'm going to go right up to select and select inverse. That selected all of the zone that isn't white. Then I'm going to go layer, new layer, oakley dokley, and then I'm going to get a color which is pure black, and I'm going to paint bucket that in. Excellent. Now that might not seem too obvious what we've done, but if we go back to our layers tab and click off the original, I've now got all the black and none of the white on its own layer in Photoshop. So if I turn off this white background quickly, you can see on this layer we've got just all of our black line work. And that is a great way to have things on here. Excellent start. So I'm going to do a tiny bit of housekeeping on the artwork really quickly. Get the eraser, 100% opacity, small size, maximum hardness, ladies, and zoom right in. And the reason why I want to do this really quickly is this shape here. You'll notice with all the other eyelash zones to all the other bits of art, they're filled in black because it gives it loads of pop for your female anime characters, and it's a great start. But in this particular example, I'm just going to show you how you can also work with colour. So it means that I'm just getting rid of these construction lines that we've drawn in with a pen, and I'm just going to be making this. Let's give this cheeky little zoom in, just a little bit further. Lovely. I'm going to be making this one solid shape that we're going to fill full of colour a little bit later on. So with these different examples that we've got on there, I'm going to show you firstly with this eye, my very simple colouring technique for eyes that 9 times out of 10 will do the trick for you. But then we're going to dive into some more detail about light reflections and extra lines in the iris zone and playing around with colours a little bit more. And then we're going to cover throwing in shapes into eyes as well as using colours in a different way. And then hopefully we're going to have a big circular pupil over here full of galaxy type eyes and all sorts of reflections and ting. There's lots of fun that you can have. Now we've got this layer here. I'm going to name it the line layer. Lovely. And what I'm going to do is create a layer below it, which is going to be for our colours and ting. Layer, new layer, colours with a U, because I'm from England where people spell things correctly. Let's not turn that into a debate. I'm going to zoom up to this eye just a little bit. And what I like to do firstly, instead of diving straight in, is firstly build up a very basic colour palette to work as from a reference. So let's get our pencil tool out because it's nice and basic. And I'm going to give this character, or it's not a character, it's just an eye. I'm going to make it yellow, a bit like Widowmaker. So if I scroll up just a little bit to this kind of yellowy zone, what I'm going to do for the base colours is I'm not going to select a colour from the very right hand edge of this box because that's where everything's really saturated and bright. We're going to use that later to help create some contrast. I'm certainly not going to go all the way down a grey end where it's not colourful at all, that's too boring. But I'm going to go about 2/3 of the way in. I'm going to pick my colours from roughly this corridor of space. So if I go around about here, this can be our base colour for this part of the eye. Lovely, I'm just going to swatch a blob there. And then if we pop back in, I'm going to create a much darker zone. So I'm going to go right down towards the bottom here. Excellent. That's going to be our darker version. I'm probably going to get almost black as well, just for a tiny bit off there. And then if we go in the other direction, I'm going to create some brighter zones. So we're going to go slightly further to the right to get a slightly brighter area to work with around about here. And if you stick this all together, you can see how they're contrasting. And then what I like to do to give everything that final pop is you have to move the colour slider ever so slightly and move into a slightly different colour. Even if you picked what colour you want the eyes, if you add a slightly different colour, ever so slightly, so here I'm just going to scroll it right up into a really bright yellow, and I'm going to go right up into the top right corner so it's really bright, really saturated, and that's going to help give the eye the final bit of pop as well. So now that we've got our colours down that we're going to play with for this eye, I'm going to zoom in just a touch more, and we're going to create another layer again to actually work on. Now, if we go to layer, new layer, and let's call this one the eye, clever, and I'm going to create a selection zone, and that's going to be just for the iris. So I'm just going to follow this shape round using the polygonal lasso tool. Lovely. We've got that shape in and selected, and then now if I use the color dropper to select our base color over here and grab this pencil and just fill that in. Brilliant. It doesn't look like too much fun, not too much power going on as of yet, but the fun is yet to happen. We are going to grab ourselves the paintbrush tool, and I'm going to make sure that I've got a nice wide brush that's fairly large, as you can see around here, and the hardness is completely dropped off. It's the softest possible brush in this instance. So I'm going to go for the darks first. When you colour in with pencil, if you guys are following this tutorial but you're just still working on paper, go in the other direction. Start with your lighter colours and work your way dark. But I'm on Photoshop and I like to work from dark up to light to really give it some pop. So we're going to go for the first of the darker colours, back to the paintbrush, an opacity around about 14 to 15%. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to make this eye much darker at the top. All the colours are going to be darker as if they're shadowed by the hood, but also to show that there's a load of depth behind the lens of the eye. So I'm just going to create a whole load of strokes across. Because it's a very soft brush, it very, very smoothly blends this colour in, which is really, really useful. So I'm just going to do that loads and loads and loads and loads and loads, satisfied. And then colour dropper the next darker colour down. And again, back to the brush, a bit higher up this time. And just really pushing all of that back into darkness. Excellent. Then if we then go the other way and get the first of our lighter colours, because this colour is a bit more saturated already, we've gone further to the right where it's brighter. When we start to stroke this one into the eye, you'll notice but it starts to come to life a bit. It's almost got this glow as if it's been showered with Mako energy, which is great, but also from Final Fantasy VII. It's not really appropriate here. So let's just tap that one in. And then after a few more taps there, lovely. This is where we get to use that slightly different colour tone. We've gone for the really bright yellow. And this time I'm not going to stroke it around and across. I'm just going to focus on this circle area right in the bottom here. We get that really bright yellow in. And all of a sudden, bang, that eye's got loads of pop and colour. Excellent. So, if we zoom out just a touch, it's going to help as well to give a little bit of colour to the white of the eye as well, or at least a little bit of shading. So because this white of the eye is below the eye layer, we're going to go down and create a new layer as well. Layer, new, the whites of their eyes. Don't shoot until you can see them. Whites of eyes. Excellent. And again, using that lasso tool, I'm just going to really quickly tap in this zone that we're going to be shading in. And the whole point of this is to show that the whole of the eye, not just the iris and the pupil, has a shape and a texture. And by applying a tiny bit of shading and shadow onto the whites of the eye, it's just going to make it all more realistic as well. So we're going to go for a very soft grey, around about that, still with our very soft brush. And I'm just going to sweep in along at the top ever so slightly to bring that down a notch. Lovely. Just like that. And that's also going to serve another purpose for us as well. It means that now we're going to put the reflections or the white light on top, and it's really going to pop when the whites of the eyes aren't a perfect white as well. Now to get the white of the eyes on here, we're going to go above the line layer. So another layer again, and working in lots of layers is really, really useful. Reflected light. Lovely. And by putting it over the line layers, it's going to show that this is light reflecting on a lens. It's going to give it loads of punch. So what I like to do here when I'm doing it in Photoshop is get the lasso tool and get an elliptical shape, something like that. And I'm simply going to paint bucket that in perfect white. Lovely. And then, excellent, all of a sudden this is now a reflective surface with a bit of quality to it. What I like to do though is have it slightly at an angle so it points to the pupil. So let's go to Edit, Transform, Rotate whilst it's still selected, like so. I'll just stick it right up there. Excellent. And then it's always a useful trick to have a second reflection of light as well. And it's still worth having it cover either a bit of dark on the pupil or a bit of dark on the edge. I'm going to go for the edge here. I'm going to go for more of a perfect circle and drop that into white as well. Boom. And just like that, you've got your eye. This is a basic colouring technique, but hopefully it gives you a bit of an idea. We start from the dark colours down to the bottom colours where it's really bright, where the light really pumps out. The bottom colours, if we can make that a slightly different shade of a colour, that really helps make the eye much more interesting. And then we've got our reflections on top. Those are the basics, everybody. I hope you find that useful. About 8 times out of 10, that will probably do the trick for a lot of character art and designs. But this is all about having some fun with the eyes. So let's dive into something a little bit more detailed. Now what I want to do for this eye is make things maybe a bit more of an aqua blue sort of look to it. So I'm going to go back to our colours layer to make sure I'm working on the right space. And I'm going to start playing around with some nice bright blues. In fact, around about here looks lovely. So again, let's select the base colour, not too far to the right at all, around about there, and back to the pencil tool, just so that I can get a quick palette going on. There's our base. Just go straight down here to get our darker version. Lovely. I'm just going to go again and get a drop of almost but not quite black to really play around with. And then let's work our way up as well. Slightly off, slightly up to the right. We've got a very nice, bright, kind of turquoisey, aquamarine sort of thing going on there. Nice. And what I'm going to do is probably just get a couple other things going on. I'm going to throw in a hint of very dark purple. And I'm going to make it very dark around about here. And I'm barely going to use this at all. But that second colour is really just going to help make this eye a little bit interesting. I'm still keeping it in roughly that blue to green purple zone. And then if we go back to our super brights, if I bring that up around about here, I'm going to get this super high bright aquamarine colour. but I'm actually going to go off to the left and get an almost white version of it coming in as well. Really, really bright off there. And you'll notice that I kind of group my splodges from the base colour, and the darks go off in a dark direction, the lights go off in a light direction, just so I can always see how they look next to each other. Just a useful tip. So, same thing again, everybody. We're going to go back to our eye layer where we actually paint this in. I'm going to use the lasso tool again, just to select around the eye itself. Now, I'm sure some of you are thinking, why don't you just use a magic wand, Mikey, and you can select all of these areas? Well, the thing is, magic wand is amazing and fun and useful, but when it comes to your line art that you've drawn in, it doesn't perfectly meet your line. If you zoom in and look at the detail, sometimes it's a bit grainy and it creates like a bit of fuzz or fluff around the edge and it doesn't quite perfectly sit in. So I like to just mark it out manually each time. But back to basics, let's get our base color. Let's have our pencil go ahead, fill that in. Do ignore that I just made the airplane noise that you make for babies when you want them to eat some dinner. Let's get our darker zone. And we're going to follow in another very basic game plan of this. We're going to grab El Brush Del Paint. We've still got it fairly large, very soft, and about 15% opacity. I'm going to just rock it up a little bit to about 20. And we're just going to start to get these strokes in. Now, I'm always doing more at the top than I am as I work down, just so that, again, the top is the darkest zone, just like so. Lovely. And then let's go darker again of that dark layer we've got in here, just right up at the top. And we're going to come back to that because now I'm going to grab this purple. This is our playing around with the dark colors moment. And I'm just going to go on the edge here, and I'm just going to stroke in a tiny bit of purple there, and then a tiny bit of purple around here as well. I'm playing around with this slightly different color. It's really just going to kind of mess things up in the mix of the colors here. It's really going to just add a bit of fun. So when you're playing around with Photoshop, have a lot of fun with your colors if you can. It's certainly worth it. I'm just putting that other dark zone back in the top, and then now we're going to go to the lighter areas up to our super bright one. Round about here, just going to start to create a zone that's much lighter as we come down here. Just bring that back a little bit right up in the top. Lovely, that's getting very bright, super bright. This is what a Mako eye would look like. And then we're going to go for this almost off-white, highly bright one as well. And I'm just going to really get that zone really bright there. Excellent. Now, what's going on in this side that's a bit more detailed from the other one is we've got a few more things to play around with, really. Now, you'll notice there is this other layer here, this what would have been a very thick black outline to the eye, where I've just drawn this in. Normally, I fill this in black so that the eye itself has loads of pop, and again, just looks really graphic, really clear and really fun. But in this instance, I'm going to select that, and I'm going to hold down the shift button and create another selection so that they both work together. Select this guy all the way around here, and all the way down to the bottom, and all the way back up around the top. If you follow any of my Sexy Anime Saturday series, take a look. It's where we get your suggestions at home and we create sexy fan art, basically, of common anime or video game characters. But what you'll notice on there is I lasso everything. You have to build up your lasso polygon skills if you want to work in my particular style. Or if you know a better way, get in the comments below because I'd bloody love to hear it. And now I've got the really dark colour. And if I now use a paintbrush, I'm painting only in these selections. And I'm using that really dark colour to create a really heavy outline for the eye. I'm not completely filling it in. And I will go back to the purple again and just work that round the top as well. Lovely. But you can see now we've really just filled in that eye and given it a bit more pop again. Now what's going on is that we've got another option once more. This pupil in the middle, we're going to, instead of having it black like we've got on the eye on the left, that's really graphic and simple, we're going to ever so slightly invert our colour scheme. Now the pupil really should be black, but you can also just make it really dark. So what I'm going to do again is I'm going to go and select this darker of the colours, the almost black, and I'm just going to focus on paintbrushing it from the bottom upwards. Just like so. As dark as I can get it, but leaving just a tiny bit near the top. Excellent. Boom. And now this eye's got all sorts of layer and character going on, but we haven't done anything about the light reflections yet. So this is where things start to come into their own. We're going to go back onto our reflected light layer, and I'm just going to again get this tool in and just create maybe a double bobble situation. So you get one kind of sphere of light around about here, which we're going to go ahead and fill in as white. And then I'm going to make another one that's kind of attached to it, just about here. And we're going to fill that one in as white as well. See how that works. We're going to grab the pencil tool really quickly, just so that it perfectly... I've got that white layer on. I have indeed. Oh, there's a little selection up there. Ignore that. Just going to get this pencil in there and just make sure that meets up perfectly white. And then now what we can do is maybe something a little bit different. If I get a rectangle, and it's not going to be right here, but I'm going to put it here so that we've got loads of contrast so we can see how we're working. Fill that in with white. And then I'm actually going to make this into a little bit of a window. So I'm going to use a selection tool right down the middle and hit delete. And then I'm going to use a selection tool right across and hit delete. And then I'm going to select all of it. And I'm going to firstly just move it to around about over here. But then I am going to warp it as well. So we're going to go edit, transform, warp. And this allows us to kind of really reshape things. And I'm going to imagine that this shape is mapped onto the curved surface of the eye. So I'm going to pull the edges kind of down and in a little bit. And this is going to all come back. It's going to come back a bit. This is certainly in. That's going to be a bit more out, as is that. This is all going to come up a bit, like so. Excellent. That makes a bit more shape for it being mapped onto here. I'm also going to drop it to be a little bit smaller now. Scale. Thank you very much. And that's going to sit around about there quite nicely. So, how are we going to just show that off more? We're going to pop back onto the whites of the eyes layer. We're going to use our selection tool to make sure we're selecting all that zone that would be, you guessed it, the white of the eye, around about var. Lovely. And again, I'm just going to grab that soft grey, that soft brush, and just indicate a bit of shadow up around the top, just to make sure everything pops out. Then, another thing we can really quickly do, if you want to stay back on your reflected light layer, you can grab the brush again and maybe just make it really hard as a brush, very small with the strokes. And we're going to pop that opacity up to about 82%. And whilst it's still white, we can follow this line around, this iris line that we've made, and you can just pop in some white strokes if you want, just a few there, just to show that there's white light. These strokes need to point in towards the middle of the pupil. We're going to have a go. But just put a few in there. A few in there as well. Just get that in. Maybe just a couple there as well. And it's basically just following this ring around. Just showing off even more reflections of light. There's all sorts of things you can play around with and do when you want to get their light on your character's eyes and just show that they're really, really cool. But that's another example that I hope you kind of get a feel for. There's a lot of things we can play with. Another thing you can always do, if you wanted, is if we select the highlights here, on the reflected light layer, you can drop the opacity. You can make them even less perfectly see-through, or bring it up a little bit more, just so that it shows that you can still see the eye behind it if you want, or you can leave it on pure bright. We'll play around and see how we feel with it. There's no right or wrong answer. Both of them are fun. Right, so there's a slightly more detailed way that I like to play around with things as well. Let us go on to our third examples, you fantastic people, and let's talk about adding in shapes and character and colour instead of black and seeing what that's going to do for us. So with our third eye here, we're going to see if we can make it one of these loved up kind of eyes, which means we're going to drop back to our colours layer again, and we're going to build up our palette. This time, let's go reds and pinks. So I'm going to bring things right up to around about here on the red scale and start to pick out a bit further to the right for these colours, because they can look a little bit bleached out and grey if you keep things in the same zone as other things. It's weird how different parts of a palette work in different ways. Let's just drop that a bit closer to purple. And we're going to have our base around about here, back onto the pencil tool. Lovely. And same old game plan. Let's drop down to a much darker version. Let's drop down to an almost black version. Excellent. And then we'll start going lighter as well. We'll go right up here for a fairly bright red version. And then we're going to actually grab maybe a perfectly bright bit of red right up there, but scan right across so that it's going to have this real light pinkness to it instead. Lovely. Then what we'll do for our kind of extra colours in this one, maybe we'll go back down to purple again. Get a really dark bit of purple in there as well. Do like a dark bit of purple for fun. Maybe make that even closer to black. We'll have a play around. And then we're just going to kind of basically try out quite a few things here. So if I go back onto our eye layer, I'm going to build up a new layer really quickly. And we're going to call this one Luscious Lashes. Oh yeah. So let's get this polygonal lasso tool and we're very going to quickly outline all of this lash. This is the only bit that might be a tiny bit of a pain in the ass just because this shape is a little bit difficult. And welcome back. All done. So I'm going to grab the brush tool again and make this a bit lighter now. We've got a very large, very soft brush going on. We're going to grab our second to darkest of colour over here and we're just going to zone that in. Now if I use the selection tool this time, not on the line layer, but on the layer of the luscious lashes, click that, it now perfectly selects all the colour because the colour is a perfect zone which has a perfect limit, so to speak. So I'm just going to pop this in for the edges a little bit. Let's grab back onto this brush. Let's drop down the opacity back to 15 again or thereabouts. I'm just going to work in from the left just to get these lashes in. And really just keep inputting a few strokes right round this end like so. Really pumps out. And then we're going to just do the same right down this side as well. Just keep getting that to just come up ever so slightly in colour. Lovely. So it's not too much. But by giving these lashes a little bit of colour, it's going to set the tone really for the rest of the eye that we're framing the situation in. So again, back to some of the core work, but we're going to be just really mixing around a bit what we're going to do in this example. So to start off with, as usual, we're going to go ahead and select all the way around the iris of the eye. As those of you may or may not know, and I'm sure you probably do, but the eye has a few very basic bits. The iris is the bit of your eye that has all the colour. And it's technically like a muscle. And what that does is decides how big or small the pupils are, the black bit in the middle of your eye, which is in fact just a hole that leads into your eye. And the pupil just behind it is a lens. And as the iris makes your pupil bigger or smaller, it also helps to contract and expand this weird lens. What a crazy world we live in, everybody. So let's grab our base color. Let's go back to our pencil because it's going to just give us a perfect flat color. And let's just color this in like so. And then back to our brush to start some shading. Now, just like before, the very first thing I'm going to have a play with in this example is go to a slightly darker color and just start to really bring that down from the top. Same old, same old. Let's get that nice and dark and down. Like so from the top. But then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to just go straight over to the pupil now, which is really, really large here. Let's get this one selected up because we're going to just colour this in a completely different sort of pattern and way. Just to show that really there's so many right answers. As long as you're creating the kind of art that you want to do, play around. Absolutely. Don't just stick with this tutorial. Oh yeah, and this is a thing. Like I mentioned it in the last tutorial as well. There are so many how to draw eyes tutorials on YouTube. Don't just stick with this one. Look at all of them because it's one of the most common things that people teach other people, weirdly enough. And you can just have your fun and learn loads of people's techniques, have a play around. Now I'm using this darker colour straight into the pupil around about here, you'll notice. And I'm going to start from this top zone and just really get it really dark right at the top instead of trying to make it dark from the bottom. Lovely, just like so. I'm probably going to drop that into black and have just a few cheeky swipes, just one or two. Excellent. So if we go back now to the outside edge, we're going to make it darker just around the outside edge, but not with a perfect bar. We're just going to do it with a bit more shape and shading. So we're just going to go up and around once again, like so. Join that up. And then now that I've still got the brush tool, still soft, but I'm going to make it a little bit smaller and give it a little bit of hardness as well, just so it's going to be doing something that we want. And then I'm going to go back onto the dropper tool and again select this really dark color. And now I'm just going to work. Oh, I've lost my selection tool. What an asshole. Let's Control Alt Z so it's reselected. Excellent. And then go back to our brush tool. And now I'm just going to work, and I'm going to almost draw or paint strokes right on the edge of this line. And you'll notice it's only coloring in the inside edge of the selection box. I'm just using lots of strokes just to bring that in. This is almost looking a bit like, is it a yandere style eye? That's the kind of look characters get when they become psychopathic murderers in anime, where the eye just looks really dead and evil. But trust me, we're going to make it look much more fun of life as we build it up. So that's all done. Got that layer in, and then we're just going to play around with the colours a little bit more and a little bit more. So again, if I just get this zone right back up, let's just get our selection tool back up, in fact. Probably going to leave that on. Grab our lighter shade that's got a bit more boomph and pump, and I'm going to probably just have to cover over this pupil zone a little bit of what we're going to do. But that's going to be fine because we're going to add in some shapes. Now let's go nice and large. Let's completely drop off for hardness. And again, I'm just going to start to put some lighter areas all up in here. Start to give that some warmth, just like so. And then I'm going to grab our slightly lighter, slightly pinker colour and just get in a tiny bit right down the bottom, just on either side here. Excellent. Now, if I just create the selection tool back over this pupil, I will just darken this back out a little bit again. Might have been worth doing this bit last, seeing as it sits on top. But join me, we'll get this done in our ad hoc manner as well as our correct fashion, because that's how we can just get things done. Selecto and Darko. Excellent. Sounds like military code for some form of racism. Darko, I've seen them, sir. They're on a ridge. Let's just get rid of that. And now we're going to pop on some shapes and start to have a little bit of fun here. So Photoshop has just some shapes. It's weird. It's just useful, but it's great. If we go to our custom shape tool down here and then make sure our shape selected is a heart, it's going to automatically put it onto a new layer for us. So if I go ahead and just draw a great big heart in this eye, like so, it's just automatically fill it in this fill color. Probably going to select it to this fill color. Can I? Oh, it's too late for that one. Let's delete that layer and select this one instead. But I'm going to bring this right over to a very pale white so that this heart's just going to have an effect in the background, so to speak. So grab that random shape tool again. Let's grab a heart in there. Excellent. Just got ourselves this nice white heart color going on and in. Now this is a shape that kind of understands it has to work like a shape and do clever things on the layer over here. So what we need to do is go to this layer, right click it and click on rasterize, and now it's just a normal shape, just like anything else we work with. It's not trying to be clever and it won't be so annoying. It also means that I can select this shape, Control C, Control V, and then transform scale, and I've duplicated it onto a new layer. I'm going to make this version of it a little bit smaller, like so, and I'm also going to make it apply a nice dark red again. Paint bucket. Boom, just like that. So then we've got this new layer in of the eye. But even better, just to make more pump, more layer, more different things we can do. And I'm really just taking up your time diving into these eye ideas, but have a go. We're going to grab the opacity of the dark heart we've just put on top, and we're going to drop that down so it still shows the colour of the heart underneath. Oh, nice, isn't it? Excellent stuff. Then these two heart layers that I've created, I'm just going to merge down together, just so that that's one shape. Excellent. So now we've got this heart zone on here. What else are we going to do? Oh my god, let me tell you. we're going to get another ellipse shape, and we're going to create a very similar bright situation down below. So let's go back and select this color. I like it. And let's create our elliptical tool. And we're going to create a zone around about here. It's going to be around about here on the eye. Pretty much perfect right there. Now, we're going to put this on a new layer because we are going to delete a little bit of it where it cuts off of the bottom, and I don't want to ruin the rest of the picture. So let's go layer, new layer, and then we're going to fill that in. Lovely. And then in a very similar manner, I'm going to make a slightly smaller zone around about here. And this time I'm just going to, again, fill that in with red. So another layer on top. If I go layer, new layer. Oh, that's not quite the right one. Layer, new layer here. Okay. And then fill that in that darker red. And again, drop the opacity down so it goes a little bit more to that light pink, even lighter for this one perhaps. Excellent. Merge those two together. And then we've just got this other zone going on. Now I'm going to grab the lasso tool, and everything that just goes to the outside edge of the eye is going to disappear, of course. Just like so. Click delete. And then as well, I'm going to do a little bit of soft erasing. So again, as if it was a brush, very soft, fairly large, with about 15% opacity. I'm going to very softly actually let's make it a little bit larger instead. I'm going to very softly just erase a little bit of that at the bottom. And what that does is it means the bottom colours of the eyes, the warm colours, still push through. Gives it loads of pump and feeling still. So there we've got some more of these weird colours going on with this eye. If we go back to a bit more traditional then, we're going to go back down to our colours underneath for the actual eye itself, which is on our Luscious Lashes layer actually. Managed to fit everything in there this time around. We're going to pop all the way back around here, back around, and then come all the way up the right hand side as well. Lovely. If I'd done a base layer, I could have used it as a masking tool, but I didn't. And we're going to just have a quick little pop of dem purples. So let's get a nice dark purple in there. Again, soft brush, low opacity. I'm just going to sweep a tiny bit of purple up on this side. A tiny bit around there as well. Just to change and play around with the colours. So we've got everything on there. Let's go back to our reflected light layer. You know it. And get some nice white patches on this eye as well. Just to really give it that emotion and pump. So we're going to just, as ever, drop maybe a cheeky circle up here. Paintbrush fill. Let's get another one up here because we can. And you can throw these around wherever you want. What these are doing are showing that there's a light source somewhere that the eye is reflecting. So you put as many or as few in as you feel is appropriate. The more you do, the more it tends to show that there might be tears in the eyes. It might be a little bit glassy, really reflective. So for your really emotional scenes for your character, don't be scared to pop in just loads of these cheeky bad boys all over the boat. You can't really go wrong. Excellent. And then what I'm going to do with the bits over here on this part is give these guys a cheeky little rotate so they're pointing more towards the middle of the eye. Like so. And then once again, we're going to make sure we're on the whites of the eyes layer. And I'm just going to put a tiny bit of grey in just to kind of help show that the eye of this character is also a surface that is under shadow and constraints and is physically real, as well as just allowing the light reflection marks on the eye to pop out even more. A little bit of shadow at the top. Maybe just a tiny bit of shadow at the bottom. Boom! So that's our third example, everybody. We've got an eye with some loved up shapes in it. There's some really fun stuff happening there. It's still very graphic. It's still very simple. But we've got loads of the main kind of constraints coming through. So let's have a play now with an eye that's going to be really glassy and maybe a little bit more detailed, a little bit more painted in for our fourth example with no eye. But we're going to add one in with our own circles. So let's take a moment. In fact, let's go to our line layer and very quickly clean that up hard and small. We're going to just clean up this zone down here where I must have smudged it in the drawing layer. Oh, these things happen. Ugh, let's turn that opacity right up. Lovely. It's like it was never there. Zoom out. So what we're going to do on this one, in order to give it a good bit of pop and style, is we're going to manufacture our own irises and pupils straight into Photoshop. I'm going to settle it down around about so that the eye sits here. And then whilst I'm currently on the eye layer, I'm going to create a new layer just to actually work with some shapes really quickly. And this is going to be our iris layer. Nice. Osiris the iris. We're going to paint bucket this in black just by using that selection tool. And then what we're going to do is going to Control C, Control V onto a new layer. And we're going to make this selection just any old color, simply so that we can see it's not black, like that. And then I'm just going to play around with the scale. What I'm aiming to do is create a black outline for our pupil, like so. Select, and then I'm going to select this new shape, but I'm actually going to turn off that layer so that we're just looking at the black iris layer and delete it out. That's how we get like a nice strong line. For some reason, Photoshop doesn't just let you draw nice circles. It's a real pain in the ass. Now that I've got that iris shape in, this other layer, if I bring it back, edit, transform, scale, I can actually just lock in those dimensions, bring it right down, and make this a really big pupil, like so. And then maybe just fill it in. Oh, let's get that shape locked in. Let's get that shape moved ever so slightly. Oh, if you've got this, if you've got snap, putting places where you don't quite want to move them, you want to move them slightly less, just go up to view and then untick snap like so. Then you can move it around as fine as you like, just like so. Anyway, like I was saying, we're going to drop this one into black as well. Boom. And we're going to drop that and merge it with the iris layer so it's all one thing. Now this eye's got a load of pump of its own. So let's get some color palettes going on. This one I really want to play around with those purple, dark, mysterious tones. So let's get our pencil tool back out. Let's drop that down a little bit in size. And we're going to go into purple. So let's start nice and dark around about here. This can be our base, perhaps. Lovely. And then we're going to drop right down into a good dark purple here. There's going to be all sorts of blues going on as well, though. We're really going to mix this one up. So if I get it slightly more towards the blue before I bring it up here, we're going to have a slightly lighter purple. But then if I bring it into this dark blue situation, we're going to go from about here. Oh, this is nice. Let's get a little bit of a bright blue. We're only going to touch a tiny bit of that in. And then I'm going to get it right into the turquoise scale again. So we're actually going to highlight right over in this kind of bright situation. That's going to blow people's goddamn socks off. A load. So then we're going to do the usual stuff. Because we've got this iris shape actually marked out with a clear line tool, we're going to be able to use the magic wand tool this time, and it should actually have the right effect. We're going to make sure that we're on the eye layer for our colors. We're going to select this background purple. We're just going to pencil that in as such. Let's see, has that worked out? Almost perfectly to the edge. You can still see a tiny bit of outline if you look very closely. So I'm just going to pencil that better, all better, and pencil that just around the edge as well. Lovely, 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 lovely. And complete. Okay, great. So let's just go ahead and select this and work within it. Actually, let's just, for the sake of it, stroke some pencil in there and then create select again. Perfect. Let's get that darker layer going. You know the score. We've got the brush tool. We've got low hardness, large size, 15 opacity. Probably just going to bring that up. I want this to be a fairly dark start. And we're just going to start stroking that other much darker layer all the way in from the top. Nice and heavy. Really going for it up there. And then we're going to pop straight over to the brighter purple. Just get a little bit of that play, just coming up and around, just so it's got that glow and brightness. And then we're going to go and move over to these alternatives. This dark blue that we've got going on, maybe we're going to have a little play just about here. Just about here, not at the top, not at the bottom, but a little bit in the middle. And then if we lower the brush size and then grab this really bright aquamarine sort of look and lower the opacity just a little bit, we're going to just put that in right here. Going to stroke that in to this zone here and this zone here. Lovely. We've got just all sorts of colours and pop and pump going on there. It's an odd thing to do, but it's going to work out in our favour as we go on. Now, with this part of the eye, we're going to just create a completely different type of dark zone as well. We're going to still skip back over. We're going to imagine a shape that kind of comes just up around about here. Again, another sort of shadow or shading line, so to speak. And with this one, we're just going to get a black going on, and we're just going to sweep a really quick, thin run on a very low opacity of black right across here. And we're doing that so that there's quite a sharp contrast of the lighter half and the bottom half, just like so. So this eye's got some kind of funky vibe to it, some funky colours going on, but we need to now work on top. This is our base, but it's all about those other things that give it a bit more pop and natural selection. So we're going to grab this whole area again with this selection tool. Can I get away with a good lasso selection like so? No, I can't. It's impossible to measure. We'll go standard traditional. Let's bring this all the way around. Our selection masking fun bags. Excelente. And we're going to continue to step up for a few classic traditional things. We're going to grab our brush tool, and this time where we went dark on the outside edge, we're going to go light around the outside edge. So smaller brush tool, tiny bit of hardness, still 15%-ish opacity. Going to grab this turquoise blue, go even lighter over into the white light zone, and again we're just going to stroke this around the outside edge, just down the sides, just to give this eye some real pop and glow on the side edges, especially up when it's dark, oddly enough, just to show that there's loads of life, energy happening behind this eye. All the way up on that side, all the way up around the top and around. Lovely. And we're also going to do the same in the middle here, just behind the pupil. I'm stroking just inside the pupil's edge, but the edge of the brush is also just lightening up the zone all around it. And it's just creating this ringed band. It's just got loads of white light just all up on these edges, all the way around again. Lovely, and back to the top. Almost like there's some sort of eclipse happening just behind the pupil here. There's all sorts of light and stuff. Seeing as that's quite a low opacity, I'm going to bring this brush up a fair whack. Take off the hardness completely. And again, just give that a couple light touches around about here. Just up there as well. Just a few taps to really brighten that out. And then what I'm going to do is go straight back to this darkest purple. And I'm going to give this a few taps to bring it back again as well, just to help balance out the colours in this example. Lovely. So that's all on there. And what we're going to do now is we're going to put on some more light reflections, but we're going to drop some more shapes in as well. So we've had a little bit of fun with some shapes that we're using this tool above here for, and we're going to do the same again. Okay, great. So if we go up to our shapes and grab ourselves a star outline this time, we get to just drop one of these in around about here. Excellent. That's not the colour we're going to have it, but whilst we've got this selected, we will just go ahead and grab ourselves this much lighter, brighter purple and bring it up to an even brighter look about here. And let's just drop that shape in again, round about there on the eye. Excellent. I like it. We're going to get that. We're going to rasterize that layer. Lovely. And we're just going to lower that opacity back down. Now that that shape's on there, we're going to just pop in maybe a couple other bits as well. We're going to grab not light layers, but we are going to, whilst we're on this shape layer, just pop in a couple more circles of very low opacity reflective zones. Now, in this instance, these are just going to create all sorts of texture and various reflections that maybe the rest of the eye doesn't usually have to incorporate. And it just shows that you can play around with colours as well as just light zones to get all these shapes and bits in. I'm drawing these line shapes in because I'm actually going to rotate them so they're all pointing towards the centre one by one. So we're just going to rotate that towards centre. Lovely. And then move it down here. And then this one in the middle. Just going to rotate that as well. And then this one in the top. Probably going to be fine actually. I'm just going to move it a touch back up here. So then we've just got, these other shapes just having a little bit of a play down there for no particular reason. And as well as that, we're also going to just use our erase tool, very soft, very low opacity again, just to take the edge off of these shapes as well, just so that they're not too bright, not too solid if anything. So towards the middle, I'm just going to take a bit out of there, just so that they just sit a little bit more into the darkness, just like such. Excellent. So by having these other weird layers in as well, before we really dive in with the colours, it's again just giving us an opportunity to just throw loads more of different textures and game plan really into this whole situation. So let's go and do just a tiny bit more, but under this very bright turquoise we've got as well. Let's see what other shapes we can just throw into this eye. I think I'm going to go ahead and do another one of those light bands to show a really big bubble of nice underneath reflected light. So on this shape layer, I'm just going to drop to a layer above. Excellent. And again, use that ellipse tool to get a nice zone that I like, round about there. And I'm going to drop that into a fill. And then I'm going to create another ellipse zone around about here. And this one I'm going to just change the color ever so slightly too. So let's put this onto the layer above. Excellent. Really bright and white in this example. Fill it in. And then use that to firstly cut out the layer below. So I've selected it on this layer. I'm going to the layer underneath it and pressing delete, just so that we've now got a gap in that circle there. And then now that we're back on this layer, I'm going to merge them down together and then drop the opacity of both, just like so. Now that I've got that down, just use the eraser tool again, very, very soft. I'm just going to take the edge right off the bottom. I'll leave a little bit of that over the outside edge of the pupil. If we just slowly brush that away, just got another zone we've just created that's got its own bit of pop and pleasure. Now there's all sorts of things reflecting into the depth of this pupil. It's really slowly starting to come on, but there's a bit of a world within that darkness that loads of light and things are reflecting off. So with that being said, we can go back to our light layer. And why the devil not, my friends? Let's go ahead and firstly work on the eye, just so this white's going to stand out. We're going to scroll back down to our whites of the eyes, get that all in, scroll it all the way around so we've got this whole zone selected, like so. And again, just going to brush in a quick bit of grey for shadow, round about so. Let's make that a tiny bit bigger. Just around the top, bring that down, and also a tiny bit around the bottom. Lovely. Then we're going to go back again to our reflected light layer and once more have a bit of fun. Now in this example, as well as using shapes, we can also do a band. I'm going to create a whole band of reflected light, white light. Just going to go right across here. in this shape, like so. And then I'm going to just, as usual, paint bucket fill that in white. And then I'm just going to actually delete out bands of this. So if I get this back on, I'm just going to create a few selection boxes. One right here, and then maybe a few more closer together here. Excellent. And I'm going to actually just rotate those selection boxes ever so slightly. Oh, what do you know? It's actually rotated out perfectly, those bits. That's even better. Let's play around with this, my friends. Let's move that down there and leave the whole thing like that. Oh, see, you can experiment with this stuff. And then if we just drop the opacity ever so slightly on this layer, lovely. Just by taking the edge off there, and you can see how it's affected the other layers as well. Just gives it not too much of a flat white pump, but gives it a bit of shape again and issue, which is great because now I'm going to go in and I'm just going to get all sorts of white circles going on to show all bits of reflected light. So I'm going to have the usual situation where I'm going to have like a big selection tool here, and I'm holding down shift so that I get all sorts of circles coming in all the time. But this time I'm really just going to put all sorts of light reflected circles all over this eye. Let's have another one up here, another little bit there, another one maybe just right in here over the eye, and then just one up here as well. And then if I fill all of these in as well, boom, you've got all sorts of bits going on with this eye. So let's scroll out a bit and let's take a look at all four of these. As you can see, there's all sorts of things you can do to colour your character's eyes and make them interesting and have a little play around with them. The kind of basic situation, get your colours in firstly, start with a base colour that's not too saturated, that's still a bit flat, and then work your way into darker colours and then build your way into lighter colours. The lightest of all is going to have a load of pump and pop, and then you can just go ahead and start getting the basic light to dark in. Maybe you want to start adding in different colours and adding in rings and shading areas around the eyes. Maybe you want to play around with what's going to be the reflection a little bit more. Maybe you even want to throw shapes in to really give the character like a bit of a moment and show how they're feeling deep down inside. And maybe you want to get a character that's just full of wonder, that's seeing a magical world around them that they're taken in by. So you have to show that world being reflected in their eyes as well. It's really going to help you out. Right guys, this has been actually another very long tutorial. Just like the last eyes tutorial, it got a bit long. So thank you very much for watching along. I really hope you found this useful, and I bloody love you if you've made it this far. If you haven't already, get yourself subscribed. Click on that subscribe button down below. It's free. What are you waiting for? We have tutorials going on, sort of 2 in a row, and then we have like some more anime drawings and all sorts of bits on the channel. It'd be a pleasure to have you along for the journey. Click like if you've liked it, click subscribe if you haven't already, and let me know what other tutorials you want to see for the future, everybody. Have yourselves a bloody lovely weekend. Take care, everyone.